Greetings, YouTube. In a surprise move, the Taliban has not just taken over the nation of Afghanistan, but they've also taken over the state of Texas. Yes, the Taliban is now in charge of the reproductive rights of all the women in the state of Texas. Now, you can say I'm being facetious here, a bit of hyperbole on my part, but there isn't much difference between the degree of agency and autonomy that Afghani women currently enjoy when it comes to their reproductive rights and the degree of autonomy and agency that women in Texas enjoy when it comes to their reproductive rights, which is essentially zero. I don't know if you understand how reproduction works, but a woman could be 6, 8 weeks pregnant and not be aware she's pregnant. I used to date someone who had, I believe, 3 menstrual cycles per year. That's it. They were very unpleasant, but that's all she had. So she could have been pregnant for months and not know it, wouldn't mind. Um, and sometimes you actually have spotting during a pregnancy. So a person could think they still are having a menstrual cycle when in actuality they don't. So trying to get that pregnancy noticed within 6 weeks is absurd. Absolutely absurd to think that you can do that. But of course, this isn't about science or how biology works. This is about stripping women of their right to control their own bodies. This is about punishing women for having sex that the social conservatives in Texas don't sanction. Now remember, if a 16-year-old tries to adopt a child in Texas, they're not going to be able to. But a 16-year-old can be forced into carrying a fetus to term in the state of Texas. Hell, in Texas, a 12-year-old rape victim who is raped by her uncle or her brother could now be forced to carry that fetus to term. Think how fucking twisted that is. That's some weapons grade evil right there. If it's not your body, you shouldn't get the right to tell people how to control their own reproductive cycle. Because the reproductive cycle of a person is a completely personal choice. There's never been a law passed in America that controls the reproductive choices of men. And remember, if someone gets pregnant, they didn't do it on their own. There was a man involved, and yet none of these laws affect the men. They're literally out and they're done. They walk away. No responsibility to this. Just the person carrying the fetus is now to blame, now to be punished. And there are even people in Texas who are trying to get like emergency contraceptive, Plan B. But it's not abortion. It's an emergency contraception because, the egg has not been fertilized and implanted yet. People don't seem to understand how reproduction works because we don't have science-based sex education in America. Look it up. Have a little idea of how reproduction works before you decide to strip it away from other people. If you don't have a uterus, you shouldn't be making these laws at all because these laws will never affect you. If I remember correctly, we had a little revolution in this country because of taxation without representation. So why the hell are we having laws about other people's uteruses? If you don't have a uterus, you shouldn't be involved in this position. And remember that 12-year-old I mentioned earlier? That 12-year-old who could be forced to carry the fetus that she got from her brother or uncle isn't forced in Texas to wear a fucking face mask. Does anybody see that as one of the highest forms of hypocrisy ever created? This is some Kafkaesque bullshit. Andy Warhol must be laughing his ass off because he never conceived of satire of this degree. Can't force that girl to wear a mask, but by God, we're going to make sure she carries that fetus to delivery. And maybe if it kills her, well, that's just God's will, right? I'm sick of these goddamn social conservatives and their desire to completely destroy the lives of women because they hate women. They despise women who have taken control of their own sexuality. They hate the fact that women have taken control of their own reproductive rights. They want to tell women when to have sex, what kind of sex to have, and when they have to have children. You can't have them before marriage, but if you get pregnant, you have to carry that to term, even though you're too young to adopt. Even if it was the fetus was fertilized by a relative or a rapist. Nope, we don't give a shit. You have to carry that to term. You know they're going to be going after contraceptive section next, and you know they're going to be going after same-sex marriage next, because they want to control every aspect of women's lives. They want them married and pumping out children. Because a lot of this is driven by white supremacy. Because a lot of white people are terrified because they know eventually, demographically, white people will just become another minority group in America. And they're terrified by that thought. And they know that if you give women the right to control their own reproduction, they have fewer children. It happens every single time, every country where it happens. Once women understand they can control their own reproduction, and once they have the means to control their own reproduction, the number of children they have falls. We've seen it again and again and again. And that terrifies some white people because they're racists. And so this law has been put into effect, and it is going to create generational poverty for many women, most of whom will be brown and black, but that's the idea. That's the idea for them. They want to create more poverty for brown and black women, making sure they don't ever have a chance of approaching in on the privileged zone that the white people currently control and have forever. Because remember, if somebody else has the same rights you have, a lot of white people see that as they lost something because they're racists and bigots. So there's nothing good here. There's no way to salvage this. So we have to fight for the reproductive rights of women. Because obviously the social conservatives are going to do everything in their power to strip them away. They don't care whose lives they destroy. They don't. They don't care who they kill, how much poverty they create, how many lives they ruin, how much suffering they create. They do not care. But remember, they're pro-life.